Is Meghan Markle using PDA, public displays of affection, to control Prince Harry? I think that's what many people were asking as they saw Meghan grab Harry's hand after he let hers go while they were at the UN. And obviously there's been a ton of discussion about their PDA before, how kind of over the top it is, how kind of uncomfortable it is, especially on their former royal engagements where it really was a professional atmosphere, and yet they're pawing at each other and Meghan is clasping Harry in a hold that has now been become the claw.
Who's in charge here?
Claw is our master. Claw chooses who will go and who will stay.
This is ludicrous.
Just like in Toy Story, it is the Meghan claw, the two-handed grip on Harry. And so I'm going to do this video today kind of discussing Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's PDA and how it's really been kind of something that people notice very much from the beginning from them, but how it's kind of gotten from, well, that's kind of annoying, that's kind of inappropriate in that situation, to actually rather concerning. I think a lot of people saw them this week and were concerned about Harry and what is really going on behind the scenes. So I'm going to give you guys a little bit of insight into their PDA, not to mention the fact, what do kind of other royals do? Because, you know, Harry and Meghan are kind of at a different level, but it's good to compare them to other royals so you can see kind of how most of them do it. But if you guys haven't been here to Royal News Network before, hello, my name is Brittany, and I go over everything related to royals. So that's news, gossip, fashion, jewelry, television shows, movies, and history. We will do it all right here. Obviously, there's been a ton of Harry and Meghan content there right now, but never fear, there will be more about the other royals coming very soon. But I've gotten a lot of requests for this video, and actually I filmed it before. I actually had a whole video filmed that I was going to edit for today, but then we saw Harry and Meghan at the UN, and I think everybody's antennas went up and went, okay, that is a little weird and that's a little concerning. So I'm going to go over that, like I said. But first, to start off, I'm just going to go over, okay, so Harry and Meghan, well, not Harry and Meghan. What is kind of the normal royal public display of affection protocol? Because everybody's wondering what that is. So generally, you don't see a lot of hand holding. That's generally how the British do it. I think some of the other royal families around Europe, I'm specifically thinking Norway, are a little bit more loose about that. I see Crown Prince Haakon and Mette Marit, they do a lot of hand holding, a lot of PDA, mostly though in their private time, which I think makes more sense. But if you're royal and you are on an official engagement, you are not supposed to be there pawing at your spouse. You are there, you are working. And yes, it's kind of a unique work situation because you are working with your spouse. And so, you know, there is kind of a naturalness that comes from that relationship. But most of the time, royals are very cautious of their PDA. They don't do it a lot. Catherine and William, yes, we see them hold hands from time to time, but when they greet each other, it's a kiss on the cheek, not a kiss on the lips. And they do. And we saw them hold hands in the Bahamas, but it was mostly when they were going to and departing the event. Because when they were at the event representing the UK, I mean, sometimes they put their arms around each other at certain events, but for pictures and things. But when you're on an official engagement, you are working, you are at work. So there's kind of a general, like, think of yourself. Let's say you and your spouse work together at your office. Would you go around every time you see each other and grab each other and hold each other's hands? Probably not, because again, it's just not appropriate. And this is something that most royals adhere to. I see it throughout most of Western Europe. Most of them do not, hold each other's hands super often, or just kind of, lean on each other or anything like that. I mean, they converse, and there's a natural closeness that you see with married couples, but it never seems to go too far. Then enter Harry and Meghan. So we saw this from the beginning. Obviously, they came out for their engagement interviews and they were holding hands. I don't really see a huge, red flag there at all. That's kind of, natural. Catherine and William, though, did walk out without holding hands, and then she draped her hand over his. And I think Catherine, throughout her royal career, but especially in the beginning, was very conscientious of following protocol. And so they did not hold hands much at all during the first couple years of their marriage, at least that we saw publicly. There was a couple of private pictures where we saw them holding hands, but publicly, no. Because I think Catherine was aware, yes, I'm marrying into this institution and I'm kind of the newcomer and I really don't want to ruffle too many feathers yet. And you know what? If you're a couple and you're really in love, do you really have to hold hands to entirely prove it to people? Or is your closeness, your natural chemistry together proof enough? And I think that's where Catherine and William are. We see them sometimes and they kind of mirror each other. There's a picture and they were on an official engagement and they were kind of back to back a bit, you know, kind of more side to side, but back to back a bit. And they were both had their hands on their hips and almost like the same exact pose. And I'm sure they weren't looking at each other going, okay, let's get the pose right. No, it was just something natural because they are so close, such close friends, such close partners that they don't really need to have to overly demonstrate. But we saw very quickly that Harry and Meghan were very, very demonstrative and they held hands constantly. Now again, I'm not faulting people who really enjoy holding their partner's hand. That's totally fine. Obviously, Harry and Meghan as well. If you think about it, they really hadn't spent a ton of time together before they got married because Meghan lived in Canada, Harry lived in the UK. So they had very limited time together. So they were still very, very much in that honeymoon phase. And so I kind of get it. But also Harry knew that they were at work. So ergo, they should not be clutching at each other constantly. But that kind of but it kind of grew and grew. And obviously it was kind of Harry touching Meghan, Meghan touching Harry. And kind of the first thing that really kind of drew a red flag for me a bit is just, you know, it was so excessive. It was all the time. They could never walk around without holding each other's hands or touching each other. And granted, yes, they're a young couple in love, as we were told, but you got to think about it too. It's like, well, you're at work. I would not, if I'm new at my job, I would not go around clutching my partner's hand. I mean, I was dating somebody at work for a bit and I was just like, I didn't really want a ton of people to know because you don't want too much attention to be on you. Or at least that's me. Maybe that's not you, but that was me. And so it's just one of those things where it's like, it just very quickly became apparent that they were doing it way too much. And one of the things too I've noticed, and I've tried to kind of remember different things as I'm thinking back, because I kind of wish I started the channel when Meghan first married in, because I had strong feelings then and I have strong feelings now. And I wish I had cataloged some more things. I remember hearing things at the time, but sometimes it's harder to go back and find things, you know, through Google and stuff if you can't remember the exact date or situation. But one of the things that really stuck out to me as well is that Meghan in particular uses PDA to kind of direct and control Harry and how he moves. So this is really apparent, and I'm so glad I found this video because I saw it once. I was like, oh my gosh, I gotta remember that. And then I tried to Google it and I could not find it and I was so upset, but I found it. So Harry and Meghan, this is right after their marriage. They're at Buckingham Palace with Charles and Camilla. It was Charles' 70th birthday celebration. Not really celebration, but it was his kind of birthday garden party at Buckingham Palace. And so Harry and Meghan, just right after their wedding, just a couple days, were there. And this is the whole instance too where they were, supposedly asked to leave and left early. But here is the thing that's just to me like so obvious that kind of it's Meghan directed. So not only was it too much, it seemed very much as a way for Meghan to kind of direct Harry in doing something she wanted him to do. So Charles and Camilla leave the room and Harry and Meghan are going to follow them. And Harry is obviously going to go first. And as a royal, he should always go first. That's how royalty works. Generally, the person who is either the blood royal or higher up in the line of succession kind of gets the first go at things. Now, there is some situations where that's not the case. Like when Catherine and Princess Anne did their first engagement together, Catherine let Princess Anne go first because she is the Princess Royal. She's the Queen's only granddaughter. And even though she's lower than William in the line of succession, Catherine has a great respect for hierarchy. And usually, again, blood princesses, blood princes, usually if they're not with their if, for example, Catherine, since she was not with her blood prince spouse, she kind of ranks lower than Anne. That was kind of the directive given out by the Queen. And I think, again, Catherine just has a lot of respect for the institution and Princess Anne, so she let Anne go first. But in this instance, in this video, Harry's about to leave and Meghan taps him and he's like, oh, yeah, you go first. And it was just odd. And you see this a lot with them, that she kind of does it to kind of move him along. And if she thinks he's not going fast enough, so she kind of touches him and she kind of moves him. And it's just kind of comes off as a little bit controlling, and that she's directing him, where in this situation he should be directing her. He is the royal, he needs to go first. And I understand that, you know, from a feminist perspective, you know, Meghan feels like she needs to go first in everything. You know, she wants to open the car door by herself, whatever. But in the royal world, when you sign up to be the spouse of a royal, you are signing up for the rest of your life to be second fiddle. I know, it really stinks, but that is the deal. You sign into this institution knowing that you will never be as important as your spouse in terms of how people generally treat you. That's just how it is. That's it across the board. And yes, men have problems with it. For example, so Prince Henrik of Denmark, so he married Queen Margaret, and he really wanted to be king. And it was kind of explained to him several times that no, you cannot be king. She is queen, you are prince. And he had a very, very difficult time with it. Very, very difficult time with it. And he even, gosh, I can't remember quite how it ended, but somehow after he died, that he didn't want to be like kind of buried next to her or something weird like that, because he had a lot of trouble with it. He couldn't stand that he was not considered as important as his wife. And I think for men, this is harder in one way because the woman is going first. I mean, Prince Philip had a lot of trouble with it as well, that he had to walk 2 steps behind his wife when he is the man, and he is, you know, an older fashioned man. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And he wanted to walk ahead. And so it is this kind of complicated dynamic, but it was very, very, I think, telling and troubling that Meghan almost immediately went to, no, I need to go first. And I'm directing you, telling you right now, oh yeah, you forgot, I go first. That was to me what that kind of tap was. I go first, honey. You know, and they did that a lot. And she would kind of, when they were going to greet people, she kind of came up to him and kind of tried to, oh yeah, I go first. But it was kind of more, again, I feel like it was more like, remember, I go first. I go first. So she is very, very touchy-feely. And that's the other thing about Meghan too. She's touchy-feely with everyone. She rubs people's shoulders. So she's very tactile. And you know what? Some people, that's just uncomfortable for some people. And I would imagine she does it as well, is because it throws some people off because they're not expecting it. She's invading their personal space. And she may think it's fine, or she may know it's kind of her way of manipulating people to kind of try to get them either off their keel so they kind of do what she wants, or just kind of, again, is that kind of manipulation, trying to be, oh, look how I'm being so comforting to this person. And she does that again a lot. So looking at it from its face right now, the PDA very much was Meghan directed. She upped the ante. This was kind of, I think, her thing. She demands this of her partners, I believe. And I'll get to the reason why I think that is at the end of the video, but it begins with that. Like, she is very, very tactile with everyone. She tries to touch people a lot. And yes, some people are fine with it, but I'm sure it kind of is weird to some people as well, especially in the UK where they're just not quite that way. And I know some people say, oh, it's an American touchy-feely thing. It's really not. It's more of a Meghan thing. I don't go around randomly touching people I just met. You know, I shake their hand, but do I go out to my coworkers and rub their arms? No, I don't. I don't do that. And I don't think many of them would appreciate that, because even though we're American and perhaps maybe we're a little less formal in some ways than some of the UK, we are also not, you know, kumbaya, everybody hugging each other all the time. Maybe that's the case in some businesses. That's never been the case where I've worked. But, you know, in certain situations, sure, maybe, but nobody really does that. You know, when you leave A company, maybe you give everybody a hug that one time. Other than that, you don't really hug anybody. That's at least been most of my experience. And then we have what many people have dubbed. Yes, so Meghan it's also the two-handed grip. So she holds his hand down below like normal, and then she'll also grab his arm. And again, feels kind of controlling, and it's also a way for her. I was seeing a couple of pictures because again, I was trying to look at other pictures, and I feel like almost does that too, to kind of trap him next to her so he can't interact with people as much because he is so close to her. And it's just, to me, A, very, again, unprofessional, and B, you don't need to cling to your partner like that. That's just unnecessary. But they do that a lot. And it's interesting too, because I saw this video, and Harry, he let his hand go over to her when they were in Australia, and she, was so happy, and she clutched both of his hands. So I think it started out as something where Harry was kind of into it. He was like, okay, this is great. You know what? I'm going to do this. This is awesome. I love how forthcoming she is in her love for me. But then you see it as well. And at the UN event, he took his hand back. Now, here's the thing. We all should have bodily autonomy, even in marriage. It's like, if I don't want to touch you because I'm mad at my spouse, I should not have to touch you until we've reconciled. Because actually, you touching me would make things worse rather than making things better. Now, Harry, it could be an entirely different situation. I'm not sure. But when he took his hand away, he should have the right to do that. But what she did immediately was grab his hand and yank it back over to her lap, and then do the claw again. Two-handed grip, one on his arm, one on his hand, and just holding him there. And he just looks so dejected after she did that. So I think it's interesting to compare the two, because you can see where one time Harry gladly put his hand over there. But now he doesn't, I think, do it quite as readily. So comparing the two, when they were in Australia versus when they were in New York, those situations, you can tell how much things have changed. Instead of when he put his hand over to her in Australia, he was happy, he was engaged, he was so excited. His wife was there, she was pregnant. They were on cloud 9. But in New York, he decided, no, I don't really want to do this right now. So he takes his hand back, and she immediately yanks it over to him, basically holds it captive. She's holding his hand captive from him. And he immediately looks downtrodden and dejected, not puffed up. Because I think somebody mentioned to me, I think it was my mom, she said, well, maybe she was trying to comfort him and she knew he needed comforting. Well, A, nobody should touch you without your permission. I don't care if they are your spouse or not. If you drop your hand and you don't want to be touched at that moment, nobody should have the right to yank your hand and put it in their lap because they think you need the comforting from them. That's not appropriate. And it's just not, to me, screams a healthy dynamic. It screams incredibly unhealthy. And later too, she was constantly rubbing his arm. So she's very, very, again, tactile. But it's part of that, constantly overbearingness of her. And then you look at their relationship as well, and they've done incredibly immature things in their hand holding. It doesn't scream mature relationship like I think they think it does. It screams middle school. So I love this video. I caught this video, and I watched part of the St. Paul's service. Finally, it was the worst royal commentating I had ever heard in my life. Oh my gosh, they so stink at it. They don't know anybody. They don't know how anything works. It was just like the guy was going there going, yeah, the queen has every, control of every bit of it. And she controls that they walk down the aisle by themselves. And like Tom Bower's book, I guess, said, no, that wasn't the case. They were late. And it's like, yeah, no duh. Like, they weren't supposed to walk down the aisle by themselves. Like, and the queen's not there, and she's 96. And honestly, I don't think she had probably that much to do with the service. I think she did, but she didn't, if you get my drift. Anyways, so they're walking down the aisle, and there's a grate in the ground, because these are churches, and so oftentimes the grates go to the crypt. And so they're walking by, and they have to walk around it. And instead of dropping hands like normal human beings, they hold their hands as far as they can until they finally have to drop them, and then immediately reclasp when they get around it. The last time I saw that was probably middle school, maybe some high school, but middle school for sure. That is what teeny boppers do, not grown adults in supposedly mature and healthy relationships. You should not need to do that. They did that as well, especially because they're on TV. They're in this national, like, they're doing something official. This is not their private time. Now, I did find a picture because, again, I thought Crown Prince Haakon and Mette Marit of Norway, they are the most tactile of the royals, and so I kind of figured, well, they would probably be a bit more touchy-feely. I found this picture of them kissing on the beach, and then she kisses them on the stomach, and I'm like, what the heck are they doing? But again, they are on their private time, and you know, perhaps it's a little immature. I feel like they're kind of more of a hippie royal couple. I feel like that's kind of more their jam, because there's a lot of rumors about what Mette Marit was doing before she got married, because she's a single mom, and she was kind of her ex-boyfriend, who's the father of her son, was like arrested on drug charges. So she was kind of in the underground a bit of Norway. And so I just kind of see her as a bit more, she strikes me as a bit more loosey-goosey, but which is totally fine. Like, I feel like that's Norway, like that's fine for Norway. I don't think it would work in the UK, but if it works fine in Norway, hey, no skin off my back. But they also don't do that when they're in public either. It does strike me as a smidge immature too. But Harry and Meghan and the long hand holding, they did that again at the Endeavor Awards. So, and it goes back to Meghan's controlling as well. So they're walking through and going through this doorway, and Harry sees somebody he wants to talk to, and he's trying to go over to talk to this person, and Meghan does not let go of his hand. And it could be that he was kind of holding on too, but it's like, but if it's a mature person, just let go of their hand. Like, it's fine. It's totally fine to let go. That performative aspect, and I think too they were holding hands, had to drop it because of the table, went back to holding hands again. And you know what? It would be so much easier if you guys didn't try to hold hands and just like walked like normal human beings at this event. You know, you've had sex and you've had a child. Like, we know, like, you trying to like, I feel like they're trying to convince us that yes, we're so in love. And so it's like, yeah, but we know you already had a kid, so yeah, we get it. And so there's just so many more situations like that. And again, I feel like people are very concerned about kind of the whole thing that happened at the UN. And again, just their general immaturity about it, that they can't ever let it go. They always have to hold each other's hands. And the reason why that is, and this is just my opinion, this is just my supposition, but I think it's part of the performance, part of the duchessing Meghan has made for herself and Harry. He must hold her hand in public, if at all possible, all the time. That is part of his duty to her that she set up as for being, like, it's a performance. It's part of their act. They have to act like they're in love rather than being in love. And again, this is just my theory. You can totally disagree with it in the comments. It's totally fine. But I think this is what Meghan, again, to me, just strikes me as an incredibly insecure person. And when you look at her time as a royal, like so many of her expressions and everything, I feel like it's part of, like, she's trying to figure out how to act like a duchess rather than just being herself. Because she's duchessing, that's what I call it. Meghan Markle is duchessing. She's trying to be a duchess rather than just being herself and just trying to be, you know, perhaps maybe, you know, just hold an element of herself back, because, you know, she doesn't need to be crazy out there or anything, but just kind of being normal. Yes, there is a certain aspect of royalty that is to a certain extent performative, but Meghan will go to events and everybody looks miserable and she'll be smiling. Her and Harry did that at the UN as well. She's smiling and grinning and he's looking like the sky's falling down and everything's on fire. That kind of thing, it strikes everybody as incredibly fraudulent, fake, almost crazy, because it's like, why are you grinning and your husband's miserable? Like, it does not compute. And people read it and go, there's something wrong there. So I think the huge problem with Harry and Meghan's PDA is that it's part of their performance as a royal couple. They must do it. Meghan has designated this as part of her duchessing, like she does her Cheshire smile that she has, you know, kind of this demure. She did that at her wedding, she did that. She does that a lot. She did that at the Commonwealth service and everybody looked thunderous. She had that, and then she had that smile again at the UN, and then she was posing in the chair. You could tell it was a pose. It wasn't natural. She wasn't solitary. She was kind of standing up, sitting up straight, you know, had her legs crossed a certain way. It was very much an act, because all of Meghan, I feel like, is a facade. And so when you see that, it's just a reflection again of her trying to fake this whole thing. And here's the problem with that. So comparing them to Crown Prince Haakon and Mette Marit, I feel like the two of them, their PDA is real. They're very much a couple in love. Even though they've had 2 kids, they've had their struggles. She actually has an illness with her lungs that I can't remember quite what the name of it is off the top of my head. She has an illness that will probably limit her life. She may actually die rather young because she has this illness with her lungs. And so, but to me, they always strike me as incredibly, incredibly in love. And they do that both in public and in private. Not a ton in public, but they do it. They kind of spread it out equally. So you get the impression that, you know, this is actually what they enjoy doing. They actually really enjoy each other's time. And they've done it throughout their marriage. And I think I don't think I'll be able to find it because I looked and I couldn't. But I believe they were at some sort of engagement or something. And one of their kids kind of like bopped their hands so they would stop holding hands. And so you get the impression, though, that they do this a lot. And they have been married 20 years or so now, so it's very much real. What I have a problem with, and I think the danger of Harry and Meghan, is that if it is part of the act, if it is fake, that means you have to fake it when you don't want to do it. And I think that's what happened at the UN. This is starting to wear thin for Harry. He's not enjoying it anymore. He's irritated by it. He's irritated by her, but she has demanded this of him, and they've created this vortex for themselves where they have to do it, because as soon as they stop doing it, everybody will wonder why they stopped doing it. That's the danger of it too. If you stop doing it, then everybody wonders why you stopped doing it. It has to be natural. If it's not natural, the moment you stop doing it, everybody wants to know why. And that's why I think Catherine and William were really smart not to do a ton of it. Because what if they were having a tiff and didn't really want to, you know, they have to go out, they have to smile in front of the cameras, but you know, hey, they're fighting over what their kids are learning in school. Or, you know, who took the trash out and who didn't. You know, normal couple stuff, or perhaps, you know, somebody was supposed to, like, oh, I can't think of something really which rich hoity-toity people would do. But if somebody was supposed to fill up the Range Rover and somebody didn't, I don't know. Anyways, so, but if they're at an event and they need to be together, but they're not holding hands because they've never set up that precedence, then even when they're arguing and they're kind of faking it in front of the cameras, they don't have this extra element of having to touch each other, because I feel like that brings up the intimacy level a bit too high. And so if you are having trouble in that moment, that you don't have to do that, I think is kind of a saving grace. But Harry and Meghan have set up the precedence for themselves where they must touch each other constantly. When they don't, it immediately becomes evident to everybody that something is severely wrong. So they have to fake it. And once you start faking it, then it quickly becomes evident to everybody that it was never real to begin with. It was part of the act. And that is why I think the PDA for Harry and Meghan just always went a bit too far. And I did forget to mention as well the kissing. The kissing full on the lips. Meghan has to introduce Harry at the Invictus Games and give him a big old kiss. She has to go, you know, she's giving him an award at polo and she has to go in for the big kiss. And yes, I kind of sort of get it, but again, you are on stage and it becomes performative rather than natural. And it's just something, and there's this one picture too where they're at this polo event. This is when they were first married, and somebody's trying to hand Harry the trophy and he's kissing Meghan. Again, it just goes way, 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 way too far. So anyways, guys, let me know what you think. Do you think the PDA for Harry and Meghan was a performance? And what did you think? I mean, I kind of asked this question before, but I'll ask it again. What do you think about what happened at the UN? Did it go way, way, way too far? And are you concerned for Harry? Because I am. Because to me, that whole situation looked really, really controlling. Well, again, guys, thank you so much for watching. I'm almost at 10,000. I'm so excited. Come back soon. Bye.